Hello, good morning, Elise. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Robert. Yes, I can. How are things this morning in the west coast of California?
Things are a little bit foggy as usual. How are things there in Phoenix?
Hot. Even coming from Florida, Phoenix is hot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, better you than me. Well, while we're not physically in person together, we wanted to get together today to talk a little bit about a topic that we have seen many times, a problem that is faced by many practice owners, veterinary practice owners, as well as other businesses across the nation, which is how to deal with the rapidly changing environment that they're faced with today. And that's in a large part driven by some of these exponentially growing technologies. I know, Elise, you and I, we've gone out and spoken at a few different conferences now about sort of the six main shifts that we see organizations going through as they sort of shed some of the old ways of working that worked really well in the 20th century. And they're trying to rethink and revitalize their workplaces and redesign their organizations and really redefine the leadership that takes place within these organizations. So I wonder if you have any early quick thoughts as to the topic that we're talking about today, which is moving from the traditional hierarchical pyramid, where power and control is contained within a small subset of individuals, to moving more toward a network structure where power is shared across the whole organization. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that early here.
Absolutely, Robert. As Jeff Thorin, one of the enlightened rebels, has so aptly discussed in his blog, pyramids belong in Egypt. They really don't belong in our business models that we work with today. So many of us have grown up in the old command and control or parent-child paradigm that we so frequently use when we're talking about our businesses. And in all reality, many veterinary practices describe their businesses as being a good family. As some of you know, I come from the world of social work, and I can tell you that families can be as dysfunctional as they are functional. I prefer to use the analogy more so of a good team. Coming from the South, where football is very much part of our culture, a good, well-functioning team tends to achieve the results that they want, much more so than the paradigm or the paradigm of having a command and control kind of environment. We need to be having team members who can think on their feet, react, and make good decisions, as opposed to team members who essentially just are told what to do and do it.
Yeah, and I think that's spot on. I think probably one of the things that people struggle with is, since most of us have grown up in this environment, and since this sort of way of organizing has been so prevalent for the last 150 years plus, I think it's really hard for people to imagine that it can be done differently. Don't you think?
Well, I agree with that. And I think one of the things that I listen to a lot from my business owners, my more mature business owners, is the comment that kids today just don't have a good work ethic. I believe that we all have a good work ethic when we are aligned with the purpose of what our business is trying to achieve, and we understand our role in achieving that purpose. Now, part of the problem that we have is our businesses today are not the structured environments that they were back in last century. We have new issues that we're dealing with. The technology is presenting us with new problems, new issues. Everything is different than what it was in days of yore. We need to have better skills and training in order to deal with these issues. And the command and control model or parent-child model just doesn't work. We have to have a model where we grow our team members into being responsible, accountable adults and able to make the decisions and deal with the issues on their own without us having to step in and solve all of the problems for them.
Right. You mentioned that a lot of the younger generation, it's perceived that they don't want to work, or they don't have the same work ethic. And I would agree with you that I think they do. They still have a really strong work ethic. I know I personally do. But I know that you want to come to work and make more than just a paycheck. Work should be more than just simply making money. It should be just as much about making meaning out of your work. So I like how you mentioned that one thing organizations can do is to really emphasize their purpose as a part of almost defining the North Star to help people make decisions on the ground level. And I think that's one of the main things, that if an organization is wanting to move to this, I guess, flatter, more networked style of working together. Um, Again, the reason why we want to do that is because it allows an organization to be more adaptable, more responsive, and more fluid to the challenges that they face. I think one of the questions people have is, well, who's doing this, one, and how can I get started, number two. I think two really great examples of organizations that are designing themselves on a networked structure where they don't rely on the classic paternalistic power dynamic, but rather power is shared amongst peers. Two that I would think of right off the top of my head are Morningstar. That's the world's largest tomato processing company. It is based out of California here. And then the other one is actually in healthcare, which is, obviously applicable to what our industry is focused on. It's called Buurtzorg, Buurtzorg, I think is how you spell that, Buurtzorg. It's a company originally based out of the Netherlands, now operating in the United States, that is consistently shown to be the highest performing in-home healthcare company over its competitors. It has lower attrition rates, it has deeper engagement level. And I know that's one of the symptoms of the traditional hierarchical power dynamic is people disengage, right? When you don't have power to make change within an organization, you kind of put up your hands and say, well, I'll just come to work and do my job. Instead of thinking, how can I benefit the overall organization and help us achieve our purpose? And I know that's what a lot of young millennials really want. They want to be engaged at work. So I guess those would be two organizations that I would highlight. I don't know if you have any others that you know of.
Well, Robert, one of the things that I constantly tell my clients is that I truly believe that most of their team members don't come to work every morning with the idea of driving the leaders in the organization crazy. But fortunately or unfortunately today, many of us don't have the skills that we need to have in order to deal with problems as they surface in our workplace. So part of my job description for leaders in an organization is that it is your responsibility to grow and develop your team. And that means that we need to give them the training that they need to have in learning how to problem solve on their own without me, the leader, having to come in and fix problems as they develop. We can't be all places at all times, and we don't want to be. We need to teach our team members how to deal with and solve problems on their own without us stepping in and being the fixer of all issues.
Right. It's looking at yourself as a leader less as a sort of a mechanic whose job is to design it to perfection up front, and rather looking at yourself as a leader more as a farmer whose role is to create the environment for that plant or the organism, whatever you're trying to grow, to develop, to flourish. So I think you're right. I think a big style of leadership in the 21st century is around designing the environment for self-organizing to occur, and then developing the people so that they can actually do those things. I mean, for me in this context, people development is business development, especially if you're wanting to organize your business on a more networked, fluid, responsive, and adaptable nature as opposed to the traditional way. One of the things that Buurtzorg does is they really heavily emphasize this style of working in their onboarding process. It's called, they call it solution-driven methods of interaction. And they go over everything from how to give and receive feedback, how to deal with conflict on a peer-to-peer basis. I mean, if you don't have a manager to help resolve conflict between you and another individual, how does it get resolved? They actually go through that and talk through how to communicate. I mean, how many vet practices have you been to where they have that as a part of their onboarding process?
No, and it's absolutely critical, Robert, that we set the stage very early on when we've hired new team members, that they understand our culture in our practice, and it's very much adult to adult interactions as opposed
Absolutely.
to parent-child paradigm.
To me, and I know we've talked about this before, that seems to be one of the biggest things that an organization can do to get started going down this path is start talking about it. And the best place to start talking about it is when somebody first joins your organization. And you want to start really driving home the point of, look, we operate a little bit differently here, right? We operate on a peer-to-peer basis. We operate adult-to-adult relationships here rather than relying on somebody else to solve your problem. You have to own it. But that takes developing the person as well. Elise, if folks wanted to learn more about this, where would they go? I know we have a couple resources out there that people can go and visit and interact with other vet practice owners or other individuals out in the workforce who are interested in redesigning their businesses to operate more effectively in the 21st century.
Well, there's always our website, which is enlightenedrebelalliance.net, or the Facebook page, which is the Enlightened Rebel Alliance Facebook page, where we also, several of us speak at vet conferences. But if you don't want to wait until the next conference to join in on these conversations, please go to our website and see how you can learn more about what Enlightened Rebels are all about.
Yep, got a lot of blogs on there, a lot of topics that we've talked about around the shift the organizations are going through as they prepare to move from the old, outdated 20th century model to the rapidly changing environment of the 21st century. EnlightenedRebels.net, or then go to our Facebook page, the Enlightened Rebel Alliance. Elise, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day there in sunny Phoenix. And I will chat with you probably in a couple weeks. I think we're going to be talking about how to revitalize your workplace, talking about culture in August, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Take care now. Bye.